Hello and welcome. I'm Tom.
And I'm Amy. Thanks for joining us.
We're really glad you're here as we take a closer look at some pretty complex global issues today.
Yeah, we've got a whole stack of materials here, sources you've shared, that paint a picture of, well, a world feeling pretty tense right now, uncertain.
Right. So our mission really is to try and cut through some of that noise. We want to pull out the key insights from these sources and help make sense of what's happening and, why it actually matters to you. So I think a lot of us feel it, don't we? Especially if you're online or watching the news, just this sense that things are getting more tense.
Oh, absolutely. It's a gut feeling for many, but the data really backs it up. It's quite stark, actually.
Oh, so.
Well, look at conflict zones globally. They've jumped 66% in just the last 3 years. 66%.
Wow. That's huge.
It is. And military spending up 10% just year over year. That marks a whole decade, 10 years of nonstop growth. SIDE-IRE, that's the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, says it's the highest amount they've ever recorded.
A whole decade of increases.
Yeah. And get this. Since 2023, 59 different states have seen war break out. That's the highest number in a single year since 1946.
Since just after World War II ended.
Precisely. And then there's this Atlantic Council survey from December 2024. They asked 400 global strategists.
Okay, what do they find?
It's pretty sobering stuff. 65% think China will invade Taiwan by force within 10 years. 40% expect a world war in the next decade.
40%.
50% think nuclear weapons will be used in the next 10 years, and 45% think Russia and NATO will end up fighting directly.
And you mentioned NATO troop readiness.
Right. 300,000 NATO troops are now on 30-day high alert readiness. So the pieces are definitely moving.
When you lay it all out like that, those numbers, the trends, it really makes you ask, doesn't it? Could it be that World War III isn't something looming, but maybe it's already started? Just, not like the old black and white film.
Yeah. That's the core question, I think, because modern conflict, it just looks different. It's not always about who has the biggest army in the traditional sense.
Right.
It's more about destabilizing societies, sometimes using, server farms. A handful of people miles and miles away can cause immense disruption. It's about asymmetric leverage, finding weaknesses, economic, informational, internal divisions, and exploiting them without a big direct fight.
And that brings us to this idea of proxy warfare, which seems central to this new landscape. Can you break that down? What does it really mean?
Sure. So basically you have a powerful, often wealthy nation. They fund, train, maybe arm fighters in a less wealthy state.
Okay.
And the goal is to use that conflict, that intermediate nation, to damage or diminish the capabilities of their main rival, their primary target.
So the fighting happens somewhere else, but it serves the bigger power's interests.
Exactly. We've seen patterns like this in Libya, Syria, Yemen, even aspects in Afghanistan and Iraq, though those were more direct interventions too.
And the sources mention Israel and Iran.
Yes, that's presented as a kind of model. Israel acting in some ways as a proxy for U.S. interests, receiving American weapons, intelligence, financial backing, all aimed at containing or diminishing Iran.
It's an uncomfortable idea, isn't it? Getting the benefits of conflict without the direct risk.
It is uncomfortable. And it's risky. It gives you options, sure. But as we saw in places like Vietnam, these proxy situations can escalate dramatically. They can blow up in your face.
Beyond these physical proxies, there's this whole other layer. Information warfare. We hear that term a lot. And this idea of a post-truth society. What's going on there?
Well, it means information itself, digital tools, they become weapons. Think propaganda, massive amounts of misinformation, narratives designed purely to mislead or confuse.
Right.
It creates this constant background hum of tension, of anxiety, and traditional news sources, they're fragmented now. Social media platforms, well, they often deepen the divisions.
How do adversaries use that?
Countries like Russia and China are described as being very adept at exploiting the internal polarization that already exists in democracies. They basically play different groups off against each other.
Can you give an example?
The sources point to what happened on some college campuses after the October 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel. Information warfare tactics were apparently used, amplified by algorithms, really pouring fuel on already sensitive situations.
Amplified by algorithms.
Yeah, the key is the sheer volume and speed. Algorithms can end up controlling what you see, creating echo chambers. And Honestly, a lack of deep understanding, maybe call it ignorance, makes people more susceptible to this kind of polarization. It's not just about lies, it's about weaponizing those echo chambers.
And leaders use social media directly now, too, right, for like wartime messaging.
Absolutely. Public diplomacy, they call it. Leaders, their proxies, sending messages straight out via social media, amplified instantly. It bypasses traditional channels.
There's also a concern raised in the materials about internal politics, specifically in the U.S.
Yes. The worry is that the political infighting, the intense focus on attacking the other side domestically, can actually come at the expense of national security. Prioritizing, scoring points at home over global stability. There's a sort of expressed wish in the material that America could move past this tribalism to lead more effectively.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to something frankly terrifying: the nuclear threat. The sources suggest we're closer than many people realize. Maybe just one mistake, one miscalculation,
Mhm.
even an AI video, away from disaster.
It's a stark reality, and the landscape has changed significantly. It's not just two superpowers anymore. We now have 9 countries with nuclear weapons capability.
9.
Yeah, and there's the book mentioned nuclear war, a scenario. It paints a chilling picture based on interviews with, presidential advisors, submarine commanders.
What's the headline finding?
72 minutes. That's the time frame they calculate from a nuclear launch to the start of a potential nuclear winter, just over an hour.
72 minutes.
And one expert, a former clandestine CIA officer who actually oversaw Minuteman III missile silos, with the physical keys, they noted how young many of the soldiers are today who hold these incredibly critical responsibilities.
That really puts it into perspective. And earlier you mentioned that survey. 50% of strategists think nukes will be used in the next 10 years.
That's what the survey found, yes.
Yeah.
And the expert we mentioned, their personal assessment was a 30% chance of some kind of nuclear detonation happening in our lifetime.
So are we talking full-scale ICBMs hitting cities?
That's less likely, according to the sources. The traditional strategic weapons, everyone knows that leads to mutual assured destruction, MAD, no one wins.
Okay, so what is considered more likely?
2 things, mainly. First, dirty bombs. These aren't true nuclear explosions, but they use radioactive material, say 60% enriched uranium, packed with conventional explosives. Could fit in a car trunk, a suitcase, creates a massive radiation cloud, panic, contamination.
Still devastating.
Absolutely. And second, tactical nukes. These are much smaller nuclear warheads, maybe 50 pounds, designed for battlefield targets, not cities. They could potentially be delivered in a backpack, even on a drone.
That sounds incredibly dangerous, lowering the threshold.
Exactly. Though U.S. policy is firmly against using them because the belief is it wouldn't be a slippery slope, it'd be a cliff. Any nuclear use would inevitably escalate to the strategic level.
So paradoxically, the whole point of having these weapons is not to use them, it's deterrence. Mutual assured destruction, keeping the peace, in a terrifying way.
That's the theory, yes. But it relies on rational actors and perfect information, which we don't always have. History is littered with near misses.
Like Stanislav Petrov.
Right. The Russian officer in '83, his system showed incoming U.S. missiles, potentially multiple. Protocol said reported up the chain, likely triggering a retaliatory strike. But he had a gut feeling it was a system error, which it was. He chose not to report it. He basically gambled based on intuition and potentially saved the world.
Incredible, and now we have AI.
Now add AI into the mix. Imagine a crisis. A deep-faked video appears, seemingly showing an attack or a leader giving an order. It goes viral instantly. How do you verify it? How do you react in time? It adds a whole new layer of potential miscalculation.
And intelligence isn't foolproof either.
The intelligence gathering is incredibly sophisticated, yes. But political leaders can, and do, override the intelligence assessments. You could have the director of national intelligence saying one thing about, say, Iran's nuclear program, and the president deciding they disagree and acting on their own interpretation.
Let's talk about Iran. The sources frame its nuclear ambitions as tied to its post-1979 identity, right? Independence, hostility to Israel, exporting revolution.
Correct. The argument is that for the current regime, abandoning those core pillars, including the nuclear pursuit, would mean losing its entire reason for being, its credibility.
And they're described as a nuclear threshold state.
Yes, meaning they've enriched uranium beyond 20%. Which gets them closer to having the material needed for a weapon, perhaps a dirty bomb, relatively quickly. This is hugely destabilizing for the region. Think about how Saudi Arabia might react, for example.
Right, sparking an arms race.
Potentially.
Hmm.
And the sources mention a specific point during the Trump administration where bombing Iran's nuclear facilities was apparently seriously considered.
Why then?
The thinking described was that diplomacy had run its course and Iran's regional proxies seemed weakened, creating a possible window of opportunity. But the counter perspective offered is that maybe it was the right idea, but at the wrong time. Perhaps premature.
It really highlights the complexity of command and control, doesn't it? Who actually pushes the button?
In the U.S., it's the president's sole authority. They have the football, that briefcase that's always nearby. Inside, a black book with strike options, authentication codes, an encrypted message, an emergency action message, or EAM, goes out.
And the crews in the silos.
They receive the authenticated order. They don't know the target city or country. They just follow the procedure, turn their keys simultaneously. Orders are orders.
Terrifying. What about other countries?
Russia has the infamous dead hand system, or perimeter. It's supposedly designed to automatically launch their entire arsenal if sensors detect nuclear detonations on Russian soil and communications with leadership are cut, even if the leaders are dead.
In automated apocalypse.
It's a chilling concept. And consider this. Inside the Pentagon's nuclear command bunker, they apparently run drills 3 times a day, across 3 shifts, practicing the process of advising the president to launch.
Practicing that conversation.
Yes, and the decision window. If incoming missiles are detected, the president has roughly 7 minutes to decide whether to launch a counterattack before those missiles hit.
7 minutes.
Plus, you have submarines, bombers, always airborne, to ensure retaliation is possible even after a first strike. But ultimately, the big players know. They know strategic nuclear war is unwinnable, it's MAD. So the weapons serve primarily as a deterrent, even against large-scale conventional attacks.
Okay, beyond the nuclear brink, let's touch on some other global hotspots mentioned.
Yes.
The U.S. internal polarization we talked about. Russia and China exploiting that.
Right. And in Ukraine, there was that specific incident. Russia fired an intermediate-range ballistic missile without a warhead into Ukraine.
Okay.
But they notified their U.S. counterparts only 30 minutes beforehand using the NERK channel, the Nuclear Risk Reduction Center line. It was seen as a deliberate signal, a kind of high-stakes game of chicken using a brand-new weapon system, the Irashnik, testing boundaries, showing capability.
Wow. And China and Taiwan.
The tension there keeps rising. We mentioned the invasion predictions, but China's strategy might be subtler, initially at least, economic warfare. Controlling vital resources like rare earth minerals, potentially blockading shipping routes, they could try to achieve their goals without a full-scale military assault.
Like squeezing Taiwan economically.
Exactly. And they've also been implicated in meddling in Taiwan's elections, trying to gain influence in their parliament. The U.S. CHIP Act, aiming to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. and allies, is partly a response to this vulnerability.
It feels like every front is active. And now AI is entering the battlefield too.
Yes, this is a major emerging factor. The sources mention a specific example. An Iranian-made Shahed drone recovered in Ukraine. It wasn't just remote controlled.
What was different?
It had an NVIDIA processor on board, sophisticated Chinese anti-GPS jamming tech. The analysis suggests it was autonomous, capable of identifying targets and making decisions without direct human control. Thinking for itself, essentially.
AI deciding who lives or dies.
It's a huge ethical leap. There's actually a controversial perspective mentioned that this could potentially be a good evolution.
How could that possibly be good?
The argument, however unsettling, is that an AI strictly programmed with the rules of engagement and international law might actually be more reliable, less prone to panic or emotion than a human soldier in the heat of battle.
That's a big if.
Oh, massive ifs. Huge ones. What about AI self-awareness, self-preservation, the singularity? Could these drones decide they don't want to follow orders? And think about AI drones operating in coordinated swarms or as kamikaze units programmed for specific missions. The potential for devastation is immense.
It certainly makes the decision to go to war seem easier, less costly in terms of your own soldiers.
That's the fear. It makes it more digestible, as one source put it, lowering the barrier to conflict. And yet there seems to be this global complacency. Like we're just watching this tech race unfold, almost like a spectator sport, a giant NASCAR race, as one quote described it.
It's a lot to take in. Overwhelming, really. So, faced with all this, the tension, the new warfare, the nuclear risks, AI weapons, what can any of us listening actually do? How do we cope?
That's the critical question, isn't it? The sources offer a few different perspectives on finding refuge or building resilience.
Okay.
One expert shared their personal decision, planning to leave the U.S. by 2026. They want to find a safe haven, raise their kids as global citizens who happen to be American rather than, as they put it, American citizens who reject the globe.
Why leave?
Their rationale was feeling the U.S. is a country of decreasing influence, and that to truly understand the world, you need to experience it from the outside. It's about gaining that broader context.
Interesting. What other approaches?
Another focus is on combating misinformation directly, teaching young people media literacy, not just how to spot fake news, but how rhetoric, manipulation, propaganda actually work.
How do they teach that?
By showing them the techniques, even apparently teaching them how to create bad content, like online trolling, so they can recognize those tools when they're used against them. The root concern here is what they call a breakdown of civic literacy.
Understanding how information shapes our world.
Exactly. And then, on a perhaps more hopeful note, I shared an experience of speaking at the Vatican about the nuclear threat. It really highlighted the potential role of individuals and also third parties like the UN, like the Vatican, in pushing for diplomacy, for dialogue, emphasizing shared humanity, that idea of care for your neighbor.
So bringing it back to you listening right now, what are the takeaways? More information, like we're discussing, seems good, but maybe it needs to be managed.
Absolutely. Discipline is key. Maybe setting timers on social media scrolling, perhaps deliberately choosing analog sources sometimes, like picking up a book, which encourages slower, deeper thinking.
And getting offline entirely.
That too. One expert used the phrase, connect with Father Time and Mother Nature. Basically, spend time outdoors, walk in the park, hike, whatever. It helps balance out the constant digital onslaught.
So stay informed, but stay grounded.
And stay curious. Keep asking questions. Keep learning. Don't become apathetic. Engage with your community locally. That's a powerful counterforce.
And remember that Reagan-Gorbachev statement.
Nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought.
Right. Even between bitter rivals, diplomacy and personal connection achieve that. It shows it is possible to bridge divides.
So maybe the final thought for you is this. The world is undeniably complex, maybe even chaotic by design sometimes. But real strength isn't just about knowing the facts, understanding the conflicts. It's also about building your own resilience. Through staying informed, yes, but also through critical thinking, balancing digital input with the real world and staying engaged. That way, you can navigate this uncertainty not just with fear, but with a kind of informed readiness and a clearer sense of what truly matters. Thank you for your attention. You can subscribe our podcast if you like it. See you next time.